A new rule from the Energy Department means the eventual end of gas and oil to heat new and renovated federal buildings. And DOE officials believe the rule will save tens of millions of dollars. Here with details is David Smedick. He is the federal policy manager for the Carbon-Free Buildings Program at the Rocky Mountain Institute. Let's just start by talking a little bit about, how big a deal is this, and how much does this contribute to the government's broader sustainability goals?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited about it. So we do think it's a big deal. And I think a lot of people across the industry recognize the importance of this rule coming down from DOE and the FEMP office. And so it is we believe, a key pillar of the federal building decarbonization process here. So, under the sustainability plan from this administration, you're really looking at having net zero buildings across the federal portfolio over the next couple of decades. And this is one of the key pieces. When you're dealing with on-site emissions, you need to zero those out. And that's essentially what this rule does for new construction and major renovations. It partners really well with, say, the building performance standard for federal buildings, with the existing energy efficiency rules. This is a new way for the federal government to move forward and making sure that those on-site fossil fuel emissions are eliminated from, again, that portfolio of new construction and major renovations as we move forward.
And the requirement is by 2030. Given the pace at which the government moves on a lot of things, how realistic is that, given what we understand about their ability to implement clean energy projects, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, we think this one's doable, right? I mean, it's part of the law that was passed in 2007, where these rules and those targets with the years implemented here. So looking back at over the next couple of years, the new projects that are coming online need to hit the 90% reduction mark, but then that full fossil-free key marker goes into effect for 2030 and moving forward. And what we're seeing is that, especially by 2030 and really now, your new construction projects can hit these targets. I think that it's smart, the rules that were finalized have those pieces where you can petition for, if you're really struggling with technical infeasibility, whether it's a space constriction or the technology really isn't there and you can prove that to DOE, you can move forward with the project, just working with the agency to work around those pieces. But, the heat pump technologies that are out there, which is the big ticket for this, really, it's about those HVAC systems. You have efficient all-electric options on the market now that we think you can be building these buildings with. And that's what I think is really important. So by 2030, we should, from our perspective, you should be good to go. And it's going to be a really exciting time because it's going to really help move that market forward as well, this lead by example policy.
Are some agencies going to run into situations where, they're just constrained by what's locally available, where they're just, there really is no clean energy available from the grid?
Well, so this rule in particular is really focused on the on-site emissions. And so what that means is when you're combusting a fuel on-site, whether that's for the heating, whether it's for cooking or hot water. So when it comes to the grid, there are other policies in place from the federal government that there are, and standards and processes they're working on to clean the grid and make sure that you're procuring it correctly. But this regulation is really about those on-site emissions associated with the equipment that's immovable on-site kind of work there. So your HVAC, your hot water, cooking, any clothes drying you may have that would be fossil fuel powered in the past, just making sure that's all efficient electric equipment.
Talk a bit about the ways in which this might, cause some developments outside of the government and spur innovation that might affect the private sector as well.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we're really excited about it. On the face of it, having more buildings from the federal government be all electric is really important for localized air pollution, for making sure that you have cost-effective strategies that use efficiency on that side for electrification on the building itself. But as you just noted, right, the broader impact of this, the federal government's purchasing power is really significant. And that's something we're excited about. This is indicating to the market that this is the direction that we can be moving and we should be moving and we need to be moving across the market. So whether that's private sector, public buildings as well. And that's something that here at RMI we're really leaning into and think there's a big opportunity for, with the federal government taking this move, other government entities and public buildings can be moving in this direction as well. So smart use of taxpayer dollars, ratepayer dollars, whatever you want to call it, of public money can be here for efficient electric buildings on the new construction and major renovation side. This policy should be a waterfall moment for that. And we really think that it will signal to the manufacturers of these clean energy and clean technology equipment that you have buyers ready to go now. And this is something that I think they'll build up to as we talk about that 2030 mark comes forward.
As you mentioned earlier, this particular rule only applies to new construction and major renovations. One thing we know about the federal government is that there are a lot of old facilities out there. How much of a concern are those, and are there other efforts that get at those issues?
Yeah, definitely. So the other policy I mentioned, which is exciting, is the Federal Building Performance Standard. So this was an initiative that bore out of one of the president's earlier executive orders, making sure that we have a decarbonized federal government. Is this kind of the tagline on it? There's lots of details within there, but that Federal Building Performance Standard is essentially saying that for existing buildings, we're going to create a pathway of renovation moving forward and have specific targets by which you need to reduce your energy consumption associated with on-site fuels. And so that's been going on for, I think it was released about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years. And so the agencies are out there kind of putting their plans together for, I think it's about 30% or so of their existing portfolio needs to hit some zero on-site emission renovation work by 2030 or so, or 2035. I don't remember the exact date, to be totally honest, so we can look that up. But that building performance standard is something that the White House has pulled together and moving forward and working with agencies to implement. So when it comes to those older facilities, that federal building performance standard is, I think, really going to take those moving forward. And they work really nicely in pair together, this new construction and then that retrofit standard.
And I guess the last thing I'd ask you, David, is what do you see as the challenges toward implementation here? You said there's some waivers and some workarounds for agencies that end up really struggling with this. What do you think those struggles are going to be to the extent they come up?
Yeah, I think, some of those space constraints at different times. I think that's when you do have some of the older buildings that may be going through a major renovation. Some of the technologies are a little different. So when you're plotting out how you're going to actually physically install something in a space, you're going to need to evaluate, okay, do I have the right setup here? Is it going to have the right airflow associated with the HVAC equipment that's needed for this new efficient electrical equipment versus what you maybe had beforehand? And so would that require a new structural change to the renovation, or is this a way that I could petition and understand that we just technically can't do that because it is not part of our plans or something? So I think those are some of the struggles that we'll run into, and we'll see through the petition process. I think a lot more of what the actual on the ground issues are. I think that's where we're going to see what buildings are running into. But I'd also say that I think that the FEMP office, the Federal Energy Management Program, that's really kind of administering this and pushing the rule out, they're going to have implementation guidance here coming out. They don't have an exact date, but that's, I think, really going to drive a lot of information for folks out into the world of, okay, what is FEMP anticipating some of the issues are going to be, and how are they going to work with the agencies to make sure that those issues are either overcomable and they can get the solution implemented, or if they need to rework their implementation guidance a little bit and understand what the flexibility needs are for folks. So that implementation guidance, once it comes out from FEMP, I think is going to answer a lot of questions that folks have. At least that's my hope.
David Smedick is the Federal Policy Manager for the Carbon-Free Buildings Program at the Rocky Mountain Institute. You can find this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive.